After years of raising them as my own, loving them unconditionally, and sacrificing everything for their happiness, my wife shattered our family by telling our kids I'm not their real dad. And the worst part? They believed her without even looking me in the eye. I'm a 37-year-old man, and I've been in a marital union with my spouse for 14 years. We share 2 children. Our son is 12, and our daughter is 9. For the majority of our marriage, I believed our relationship was robust. We were certainly occupied, yet content. My profession is project management, and I dedicated extensive hours to work, as expenses seemed ceaseless. Initially, my wife appeared to comprehend this, but over the past couple of years, a shift occurred between us. Disagreements became more frequent. We quarreled about finances almost every week. It felt as though each time I entered the house, another conflict awaited me. She began asserting that she could no longer trust me, but declined to elaborate. I repeatedly inquired if I had committed an error, but received only vague responses about my perpetual absence. Matters deteriorated when she started spending more time engrossed in her phone. She would sit on the sofa with her back turned, typing diligently, and whenever I asked who she was conversing with, she would either deflect the topic or state it was none of my concern. I caught glimpses of notifications displaying a man's name, one I didn't recognize at first, but later discovered was her former high school boyfriend. I never observed anything explicit, but it was evident they were in continuous communication. Once I knew his identity, I noticed her consistent smiles when messages arrived from him. That was the moment I realized the bond of trust between us was incredibly fragile. Meanwhile, our children started behaving differently towards me. Our son ceased requesting my assistance with his homework, unlike before. Our daughter, who once rushed to the door upon my return, barely glanced up from her playthings. I speculated that my demanding work schedule might be creating this distance. I vowed to take a few days off to spend more time with them, but work became more demanding than ever, and those days were continually postponed. One morning, as I was preparing to leave for work, I leaned down to embrace the children before school. They both recoiled as if they wished to avoid my proximity. They wouldn't even meet my gaze. My spirits sank, but I reassured myself that children experience phases, and I attempted not to overthink it. That afternoon, I returned home early and observed that my wife had relocated to the guest room. She claimed she required personal space, but refused to disclose what I had done to provoke this. That night, I discovered her in the kitchen, seated on the floor, weeping softly. I inquired about her distress, but she merely shook her head and asked to be left alone. Around that period, I began noticing subtle anomalies. The family computer would have browser tabs left open with peculiar search queries, such as how to prove someone is not the real father, and how to get a paternity test without a husband knowing. I considered that the children might have accidentally clicked something, but deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. I decided to install parental controls on the computer, hoping to ascertain if someone was searching for harmful content or if there was more to what I had uncovered. Not long after, I observed similar searches on the family tablet. My stomach churned. Someone was earnestly investigating whether I was the biological father of my own children. That weekend, we attended a neighborhood barbecue. One of my wife's acquaintances discreetly pulled me aside, expressing their condolences about everything and inquiring if I was managing well. I had no comprehension of what they were referring to. When I sought specifics, they became uneasy and walked away. That was the initial instance I realized rumors concerning our family were circulating and that my wife might be responsible for them. I decided it was time to confront her directly. I waited until the children were asleep and informed her I was aware of the searches, the messages, and the discussions people were having. Instead of offering an explanation, she erupted, accusing me of being paranoid and domineering. She yelled that I was imagining things and asserted that I was the reason the children were withdrawing. I endeavored to remain composed and asked her again what was truly transpiring, but she stormed off to the guest room and secured the door behind her. Matters grew more peculiar thereafter. My wife's sister contacted me unexpectedly. We hadn't communicated directly in months, but she called late at night and asked if I was all right after hearing what had transpired. I asked what she meant, and she hesitated before stating she heard I had discovered the children weren't mine and had experienced some form of mental breakdown. I was stunned. I informed her I hadn't learned anything of the sort and inquired about the source of her information, but she declined to say. Meanwhile, my wife continued to act as if everything was normal in the children's presence. But as soon as they retired for the night, she would become silent or retreat to the guest room. Whenever I attempted to discuss our issues, she labeled me overbearing or claimed I was making the children anxious. Simultaneously, she persisted in criticizing me for working excessively and not caring enough about our family. Even though I adjusted my work schedule multiple times and requested flexible hours to spend time with them, Nothing I did seemed satisfactory. The ultimate breaking point for me was one evening when I overheard our children whispering to each other that they might have a real dad elsewhere who would come to take them away. I felt as though the ground had been pulled out from under me. Everything I thought I knew about my marriage and family felt like it was disintegrating. I still lacked concrete evidence that my wife was deceiving the children or informing others that I wasn't their father. But each day, it felt more as if she was preparing for something significant, something that could irrevocably shatter our family. After overhearing my children's hushed conversation about having a real dad, I resolved to obtain answers directly from them. One evening after dinner, I seated them both at the kitchen table. I asked why they had been avoiding me and if something had occurred that frightened them. They exchanged glances before my son stated they knew I wasn't their true father. My daughter added that their mother had told them someone else was their biological dad and he might return soon to take them to live with him. They spoke in hushed tones, as if concerned someone might overhear them. They both insisted their mother had revealed everything to them. I tried to remain calm and assured them that I had always been present for them since their birth, but they reiterated what they had heard about another man. The children appeared bewildered, and each time I attempted to clarify, they reverted to their mother's narrative. Once they ascended to their bedrooms, I went directly to my wife, who was seated in the living room, engrossed in her phone. I questioned her about why she had informed the children I wasn't their father. She immediately rose and began shouting that I was emotionally abusive. She repeatedly claimed she felt menaced and demanded that I vacate the house at once. I had neither touched her nor raised my voice. She retrieved her phone and began dialing, stating she would contact the authorities if I didn't pack a bag and depart. I gathered a few garments and my work laptop, then drove directly to my brother's residence. My brother and his wife were both awake upon my arrival. I recounted everything that had transpired, and they listened without interruption. His wife advised me to obtain a paternity test as soon as possible, simply to possess definitive proof. My brother offered me lodging for as long as I required. The following morning, I scheduled DNA testing for both children and myself. I did not inform my wife of this action, as I feared she might attempt to obstruct it or take the children elsewhere. Over the next 2 days, I began compiling anything that could demonstrate my consistent presence in the children's lives. I gathered their birth certificates, old family photographs, copies of medical records indicating my attendance at doctor visits, and receipts for school supplies I had purchased over the years. I wished to be prepared if this escalated into a legal dispute over custody or paternity. While I was staying with my brother, I received an email from my wife accusing me of abandoning the family. She asserted the children were traumatized by my departure and blamed me for making them feel insecure. She copied my parents on the email so they would see her version of events. My mother drove to our house later that day to speak with her directly. When my mother arrived, she knocked on the door, and my wife answered but refused entry. They argued on the front porch loudly enough that neighbors emerged to observe. Eventually, my wife slammed the door and instructed my mother to leave the premises. When I arrived at work, a few colleagues pulled me aside. They inquired about my well-being, stating they had received strange messages from my wife about me being unstable and experiencing a breakdown. She had contacted some of them through social media and informed them I was a danger to myself and my family. My supervisor also summoned me to his office, stating he had heard rumors about me and wished to know if I required time off. I explained there was a family situation unfolding, but that I was fine and capable of continuing my work, while acknowledging to him that I might require some flexible time for court appearances or emergencies. The following day, I received a call from the children's school counselor. The counselor stated both children had informed their teacher they were afraid of their father. The school had an obligation to investigate such statements, so the counselor wished to understand what was happening at home. I explained as thoroughly as I could and informed them I would share any necessary documents once the DNA test results were available. The counselor sounded concerned but agreed to await further information. That night, I telephoned a friend of mine who works as an attorney. He emphasized that the most crucial action was to meticulously document every interaction I had with my wife and the children from that point forward. He instructed me to retain copies of every text, email, and note regarding phone calls, including times and dates. He also recommended installing security cameras around the house. Even though I wasn't residing there, he said it could help safeguard me from false accusations or prove if someone attempted to enter without permission. I went to the electronics store and purchased a set of security cameras. My brother accompanied me to assist with their installation at the entrances of my house. We ensured the cameras recorded everything occurring on the front porch, driveway, and back door. I connected the system to an application on my phone so I could monitor it at any time. Once the cameras were operational, I felt somewhat more at ease, knowing there would be a record of who came and went. I also began transferring important possessions from the house to my brother's garage. I brought items such as my passport, birth certificates, tax documents, and financial records. I did not wish to risk these being damaged or disappearing if my wife decided to escalate matters. My brother cleared a shelf in his garage where I could store boxes of documents, photo albums, and even some of the children's artwork that I wanted to preserve. He pledged to safeguard everything until I understood the custody situation. While I focused on gathering evidence of my paternal role, I also continued attending my job to support myself and the children. I endeavored to maintain as much normalcy as possible for them by sending texts to check in and asking my brother to drive by the house to ensure everything appeared satisfactory. Each day brought new stressors, but I remained focused on taking the necessary steps to protect my children and establish the truth. The DNA test results arrived on a Thursday afternoon. The documents unequivocally confirmed I was the biological father of both my son and my daughter. The results listed my name, the children's names, and a confirmation of a 99.99% match. I photographed the official documents and saved them in multiple locations: my phone, my laptop, and a USB drive. I wanted to ensure they could not be lost or destroyed. That same day, I emailed the results to my wife, attaching scanned copies of the paperwork. I asked her to review them and confirm her understanding of their implications. 2 days passed without a reply. I checked my email every hour, but there was nothing from her. On the second evening, my wife's sister telephoned me. She explained that my wife was staying with a friend across town and did not wish to return home. She refused to provide the address or allow me to speak with her. She stated my wife felt unable to confront me after all that had transpired. I brought the DNA results to my brother's house and presented them to him, his wife, and my mother. My attorney friend visited that evening, and I showed him the documents as well. They all conveyed the same advice. I needed to go to family court immediately and request emergency custody of the children. They asserted it was the only way to ensure their safety and prevent further falsehoods. The following morning, I took the papers and consulted a family law attorney. I presented all the facts to him: the searches on the tablet, the information conveyed to the children, the circulating neighborhood rumors, and the DNA results proving my paternity. The attorney explained that my wife's actions constituted a form of parental alienation, which courts regard with significant gravity. He informed me I had a strong case for custody because the deception was already detrimental to the children's well-being. After the meeting with the attorney, I proceeded directly to the children's school. I met with the school counselor, bringing the printed DNA results and explaining the circumstances. The counselor listened attentively, posed a few questions, and stated they had observed changes in the children's behavior. They recommended therapy sessions to assist the children in processing everything that had been occurring. The counselor offered to arrange an appointment with a therapist specializing in helping children cope with family conflicts. That same afternoon, I sent another email to my wife, directly informing her of my intention to seek full custody of the children. I explained that her falsehoods had harmed the children and disrupted their lives, and I could not permit that to continue. A few hours later, I received an email from her. She wrote that she had only fabricated the children's paternity to coerce me into spending more time with the family. She attributed her actions to me, claiming I was never home, and compelled her to resort to extreme measures. I booked my initial appointment with a therapist for myself that evening. I recognized the necessity of remaining focused and maintaining mental clarity if I wished to protect my children. The therapist specialized in assisting individuals through betrayal and high-conflict divorces. We formulated a plan for weekly sessions so I could remain prepared for the impending custody battle. By the weekend, I noticed more individuals in our neighborhood avoiding me. Neighbors who once waved as I drove by averted their gaze or quickly entered their homes. Some parents from the children's school who used to chat at drop-off stood in small groups whispering as I walked past. It was evident my wife had continued disseminating stories about me, and people were believing them. My brother assisted me in reaching out to people who knew me well. He and I contacted colleagues, a few parents from the children's school with whom I had positive relationships, and even some neighbors who were still willing to converse. We asked them if they could compose letters detailing the kind of father I was and describing any positive interactions they had witnessed between me and my children. Several individuals agreed to help, and I collected their statements to present in court. On Monday morning, my attorney helped me file an emergency motion for temporary custody. We included the DNA results, copies of the messages where my wife made false assertions, statements from the children's counselor, and letters from individuals who supported me. The motion elaborated on how my wife's deception had caused emotional harm to the children and placed them in a perplexing, unstable situation. After we submitted the paperwork, I contacted my phone provider and had my wife's number permanently blocked from my phone. I wished to ensure there would be no more calls, texts, or voicemails that could escalate matters or be used to distort my words later. Once the block was in place, I updated my attorney so he could inform her lawyer that all communication needed to proceed through official channels. Late that afternoon, my attorney telephoned me at work to confirm we had a court date scheduled 3 weeks from that day. The hearing would provide a judge the opportunity to hear both sides and determine temporary custody arrangements until a final decision could be rendered. Knowing there was an official date on the calendar provided me with a focal point, and I began organizing all the paperwork and evidence we had amassed thus far. My brother offered to drive me and accompany me on the day of the hearing, and my mother promised to care for the children at my brother's house to maintain their routine while I attended court. In the interim, I continued going to work and caring for the children whenever they were with me, ensuring they ate nutritiously, arrived at school punctually, and kept up with their after-school activities. Each day, I added new entries to a journal documenting everything that occurred, including phone calls, emails, conversations with the children, and interactions with anyone connected to my wife. I saved copies of every email, printed every document, and kept everything in a locked cabinet at my brother's house. With every step, I felt as though I was constructing a robust case to reveal the truth and shield my children from further confusion or falsehoods. 3 days after the court date was set, my wife arrived at my brother's house without prior notice. She walked directly to the front door, pounding on it and shouting that she wished to see the children. My brother answered and informed her the children were at school. She disbelieved him and began yelling in the front yard, claiming I had abducted them. Neighbors started emerging to observe, and she continued shouting louder. Cars slowed down on the street, and one neighbor across the road contacted the police. Within 10 minutes, 2 police vehicles pulled up to the curb. Officers positioned themselves between my wife and the house. I handed one officer the DNA results and a temporary custody paperwork demonstrating the children were legally in my care. The officers reviewed the documents and then spoke with my wife on the opposite side of the yard. After hearing both perspectives, they instructed her to leave immediately. They explained that if she returned without permission, she could be arrested for trespassing. She stood near her car, glaring at the house for a few minutes, then drove away without uttering another word. That evening, my attorney received a call from my wife's lawyer. He stated they wished to negotiate a custody agreement that included unsupervised visits for her. My attorney telephoned me to relay the proposal, but I declined. I informed him I was uncomfortable with her seeing the children alone given all that had transpired and her unstable conduct. The following morning, the children's therapist contacted me. The therapist explained both children were experiencing nightmares almost every night. They repeatedly woke up crying because they feared their mother would take them away. The therapist recommended maintaining a calm, consistent routine and continuing therapy to help them feel secure. Later that day, my supervisor summoned me to his office at work. He had learned about what occurred on my brother's lawn because someone in the neighborhood had posted a video online. He inquired if I required time off or a reduced schedule. I explained I wished to continue working but needed flexibility. He instructed me to inform him what hours would be beneficial, so I switched to earlier mornings so I could be home in the afternoons for the children. My mother came to stay at my brother's house to assist. She began picking the children up from school, preparing meals, and ensuring they completed their homework. Her presence provided the children with a sense of normalcy once more. My brother and I concentrated on maintaining their daily routine, and my mother filled in the gaps so they never felt isolated. 2 days later, one of my wife's friends posted on social media that I had kidnapped the children and was concealing them from their mother. The post rapidly circulated in our neighborhood, and people started whispering whenever I dropped the children off at school. My attorney observed the post and immediately filed for an emergency protective order, explaining to the judge how these falsehoods were creating danger for me and emotional distress for the children. Not long after, the children's school telephoned me. Staff explained my wife had appeared unannounced that morning and attempted to sign the children out of school, referencing the custody paperwork I had provided the school. They prevented her and refused to release the children. After she departed, the principal called to confirm I still desired the restriction to remain in effect, which I did. My attorney advised me to meticulously track every social media post or comment accusing me of wrongdoing. He instructed me to save screenshots, print copies, and record the times and dates they were posted. He explained these would be valuable in court to demonstrate a pattern of false claims and harassment. Together with my attorney, we formulated a proposal for supervised visitation. The plan included the presence of a professional supervisor during any visits with the children. The visits would only occur at a neutral location approved by the court. My attorney stated this would demonstrate to the judge my willingness to allow contact as long as it was safe for the children. I also reached out to neighbors and school staff who were aware of my wife's attempts to take the children or who witnessed her causing public disturbances. I asked if they would be willing to provide statements for the court. Several individuals agreed and began drafting letters explaining what they observed or heard about her behavior. That same week, the children's therapist recommended joint therapy sessions. These sessions would include me and the children together, providing us with a secure environment to discuss everything openly. The therapist explained it would help rebuild trust and make the children feel safe around me again. I spent evenings organizing every piece of evidence I had amassed thus far. I labeled every email, photograph, and video. I sorted the DNA documents, school reports, and statements from witnesses. My attorney explained that the stronger and clearer the evidence, the easier it would be for the judge to comprehend the true situation. I arranged all the paperwork in folders, placing them in a fireproof safe at my brother's house, along with digital copies on a password-protected drive. I created a checklist to ensure nothing was missing before the upcoming court date. With everything prepared, I continued focusing on the children's daily needs, taking them to therapy, assisting them with schoolwork, and ensuring they felt loved and protected. Each day presented a new challenge, but I remained focused on keeping the children safe and building the strongest possible case for custody. The court date arrived, and my brother drove me there early that morning. My attorney met us outside the courthouse, and we proceeded through the security line together, carrying folders of documents. Inside the courtroom, we sat opposite my wife and her lawyer. The judge reviewed the DNA results, statements from the school, the therapist reports, and the evidence of her attempting to pick up the children without permission. After hearing both sides, the judge granted me temporary full custody of both children and issued a protective order requiring my wife to maintain distance from me and the children. The judge stated any attempt to contact us directly would violate the order and could lead to arrest. The following day, my mother received 3 voicemails from my wife, pleading for updates about the children and requesting to meet them somewhere. I instructed my mother not to answer or return the call. She saved the voicemails on her phone and forwarded copies to my attorney. That way, there was a record demonstrating my wife continued attempting to make contact even after the protective order was in place. Later that week, the children inquired about their mother's whereabouts and why she wasn't visiting or calling. I explained she required time away and made sure not to speak negatively about her. I informed them I was there for them and they would continue residing with me. They seemed calmer after hearing they would not be taken away or compelled to leave their home. My attorney filed a request with the court for my wife to undergo a psychological evaluation. The motion included details about her erratic behavior, the false claims she made, and the emotional harm inflicted upon the children. The attorney explained the evaluation would help determine if she could safely have any future contact with the children. 2 days after the protective order became effective, my wife's lawyer contacted my attorney, offering to arrange mediation. They stated she would consider joint custody if the protective order was immediately lifted. I declined to agree to any mediation until the custody case was fully resolved, explaining that I needed to prioritize the children's safety and stability. That weekend, my wife's cousin appeared at my brother's house carrying a sealed letter. He stated it was from my wife and that I needed to read it immediately. I refused to accept the letter, instructed him to leave the property, and contacted my attorney to report the incident. My attorney documented the event as another attempt to breach the protective order through third parties. When the children returned to school on Monday, their teachers reached out by phone to share how much more focused and settled they seemed. They stated both children were participating in class and smiling again, a significant change from the preceding weeks when they had been quiet and distracted. The teachers offered to provide statements for court about the positive difference they observed since the children began living with me full-time. My supervisor discreetly spoke with me at work and stated he had noticed a considerable improvement in my performance. He explained he understood how challenging the past month had been and expressed his pride in how I was managing everything. He offered support and flexibility whenever I required it to continue balancing work and parenting. On the advice of my attorney, I engaged a security company to install motion sensors and a monitored alarm system at my house. The technician placed sensors on all exterior doors and windows and connected everything to an application on my phone. The alarm system was linked to a security company that could immediately contact the police if anyone attempted to break in or tamper with the house. That same week, my wife filed a police report accusing me of harming her during one of our last arguments at home. She claimed I grabbed her and shouted threats. My attorney responded swiftly by submitting the security camera footage from the day in question, which showed I packed my bag and departed without any confrontation. The police closed the report without charges and added a note that the claim was disproven. At our next therapy appointment, the children shared they felt safer knowing they would remain with me. They ceased asking if someone was coming to take them away. The therapist stated they showed signs of feeling secure again and suggested incorporating family counseling sessions. I scheduled weekly family therapy sessions so we could rebuild trust and help the children feel comfortable discussing everything openly. One of my neighbors who had previously spread rumors after hearing my wife's stories knocked on my door. He apologized for believing falsehoods about me. He stated he understood the truth now after observing the police at the house and reading the protective order. He offered to write a statement for court explaining what he had heard from my wife and what he later realized was inaccurate. I purchased a new notebook and began meticulously recording everything that transpired each day. I included times, dates, conversations with the children, calls with the school, messages from my wife's lawyer, and anything else connected to the case. I stored the notebook in the same locked cabinet as my other documents. My attorney telephoned at the end of the week with an update. The court was finalizing the schedule for the final custody hearing and expected to set a date within the next 2 weeks. He explained we needed to remain prepared with every piece of evidence organized and witnesses ready to testify if necessary. My attorney reminded me that even though the process was progressing slowly, every step we took was strengthening my case to protect the children and secure a stable, safe future for them. A notification from the courthouse arrived by mail, confirming the date for the custody hearing. Included in the paperwork was a petition from my wife requesting joint custody of the children. This request surprised my attorney given the protective order and the evidence already presented about her false claims and attempts to turn the children against me. We reviewed the documents carefully, and my attorney began organizing a timeline that detailed every event since the problems commenced. The searches on the family tablet, the deception directed at the children, the unauthorized pickup attempt at school, the fabricated police report, and the multiple confrontations at my brother's house. My attorney contacted the children's therapist and inquired if they would testify in court. The therapist agreed, stating they could provide details on how the children's anxiety and fear were directly linked to the narratives their mother conveyed about having a different father. The therapist also offered to include therapy records demonstrating the children's progress since residing with me full-time. My mother expressed her desire to speak in court as well. She had been present during several of my wife's emotional outbursts and confrontations and offered to describe those incidents firsthand. My attorney stated her testimony would help demonstrate to the court a clear pattern of erratic and aggressive behavior. A few days before the hearing, my wife's attorney submitted a request to the court asking for a postponement. They claimed they required more time to prepare new evidence. My attorney argued there had already been ample time, and the judge denied the delay, maintaining the original date for the custody hearing. My brother provided video footage from the security cameras installed at his house. The footage showed my wife arriving unannounced, yelling in the yard, and refusing to leave until the police arrived. We saved clips of these incidents and added them to the folder of evidence prepared for the court. A guardian ad litem was appointed by the court to meet with the children. The guardian visited my brother's house, asked the children questions about their daily life, feelings about each parent, and any concerns they had. The guardian observed their interactions with me and took notes on how comfortable and relaxed they appeared. The guardian then wrote a preliminary report for the judge, recommending the children remain with me permanently due to the consistent, calm environment they experienced. My attorney filed an additional motion based on new information we uncovered. We learned my wife was seeing a man who had a criminal record for assault. The motion requested the court to limit any future visitation she might receive to supervised visits only, citing concerns about exposing the children to someone with a violent history. I met with the children's school principal and guidance counselor. They updated the children's records to state only I or approved family members could pick them up from school. Staff received copies of the protective order so they would know what to do if my wife attempted to retrieve the children without permission again. Word reached me that my wife's cousin began telling people I had falsified the DNA test results. He claimed I had paid someone to produce counterfeit paperwork to keep the children away from their mother. My attorney advised me to act promptly, so I printed certified copies of the DNA results and distributed them to key individuals in our community: the school principal, the children's therapist, my supervisor, and neighbors who had previously supported my wife. Each copy bore a raised seal and notarized signature from the lab, proving their authenticity. To boost morale, a few of my colleagues arranged a small evening gathering at a restaurant. They invited my brother and mother, and we spent a couple of hours discussing everyday matters. They reminded me I was not alone and offered to provide statements to the court about my character and dedication as a father. That weekend, I dedicated time to composing a personal statement for the upcoming hearing. I focused on specific instances of caring for the children, teaching them to ride bicycles, assisting them with science projects, reading bedtime stories, and coaching my son's soccer team. I included details about how I ensured they attended every doctor's appointment and parent-teacher conference. My statement concluded with a clear pledge to provide a stable, loving home where they could thrive without apprehension or confusion. My attorney scheduled a final meeting at his office. We meticulously reviewed every piece of evidence one last time. He checked the timeline, therapy records, guardian's report, video footage, school records, and character statements. He explained we had a compelling case to present in court and felt confident the evidence would demonstrate to the judge what was best for the children. At the end of the week, the judge officially scheduled the final custody hearing for 4 weeks from then. The court clerk provided written confirmation of the date. My attorney created a checklist for the weeks ahead so we could finalize the preparation of every document, coordinate witnesses, and ensure nothing was overlooked. My brother agreed to remain by my side through the hearing, and my mother continued caring for the children to keep their days calm and consistent. Each day leading up to the court date, I continued adding to my journal, recording new details, and organizing them so the truth of everything that had occurred would be unmistakable when the time came to present it in court. 2 weeks before the final custody hearing, the court mandated both sides attend mediation. My brother drove me downtown early that morning, and my attorney met us at the courthouse conference room. My wife arrived with her lawyer and refused to meet my gaze. The mediator commenced the session by outlining the objective of reaching a parenting agreement outside of court, but my wife repeatedly asserted claims that I had manipulated the children and turned them against her. She rejected every proposal for shared custody or supervised visits. After several hours with no progress, the mediator concluded the session, reporting to the judge that an agreement could not be reached. My attorney presented the judge with copies of text messages between my wife and several friends where she admitted she had informed the children they might have a different father. The messages also showed her telling people she wanted the children to fear me so they would choose to remain with her. These texts became crucial evidence demonstrating her direct efforts to alienate the children. The guardian ad litem completed the final report and submitted it to the court. The report stated that the children were flourishing with me, while interactions with their mother during the evaluation were strained and made them visibly anxious. The report recommended permanent custody be awarded to me, citing the mother's ongoing instability and the emotional damage she caused, adding that gradual, professionally supervised reintroduction could be explored if she showed progress in therapy. My wife's lawyer filed a request asking for the children to testify in court. The judge reviewed the guardian's report and statements from the therapist, then denied the request, explaining it would only traumatize the children further. On the second day of the pre-hearing proceedings, my wife's high school ex-boyfriend appeared in court under subpoena. He testified he never believed the children were his and confirmed he never discussed paternity with my wife. His testimony completely undermined her assertion that the children might have a different biological father. My employer submitted a formal letter commending my dedication to my job and highlighting how I balanced work while caring for my children through the difficult months. The letter described my consistent attendance and reliability, refuting my wife's claims that I was unstable or incapable of providing for the children. The court-ordered psychological evaluation of my wife was completed, and the results were shared with the judge and both attorneys. The report described untreated anxiety and manipulative behaviors, concluding that she presented a risk of emotional harm to the children if unsupervised visitation was granted. The children's therapist included drawings they made in therapy sessions in the professional report for the court. The drawings depicted images of their mother yelling and them hiding, alongside drawings of them feeling safe at home with me. The therapist noted that the artwork clearly reflected their apprehension of being separated from me. Midway through the week, my wife's lawyer approached my attorney with an offer. She would agree to shared custody if I consented to withdraw the protective orders. I declined immediately, informing my attorney that the protective orders were essential for the children's safety and my peace of mind. 2 days later, my bank contacted me after noticing several substantial withdrawals from our joint account. I checked the account and discovered my wife had taken nearly half the balance. My attorney filed an emergency motion the same day, requesting the court freeze the remaining marital assets until the divorce and custody issues were resolved. The principal of the children's school prepared a written statement. The principal described how the children's behavior had steadily improved since living with me full-time, emphasizing their consistent attendance, enhanced grades, and positive demeanor in class. My brother assisted me in finalizing plans to relocate to a new residence. We signed a lease on a modest house in a tranquil neighborhood closer to the children's school. Moving into the new home would distance the children from the tension associated with the old marital home and provide a fresh start. My attorney submitted a motion asking the court to keep any contact between my wife and the children strictly supervised until the final custody decision was made. The motion cited the new evidence from the psychological evaluation and financial withdrawals as justifications for the restriction. The court responded by setting a date for the final custody hearing, which was scheduled to take place 3 weeks later. This date provided both sides with a clear timeline for preparing final arguments and gathering any remaining documents or witnesses. Over the next several days, I concentrated on maintaining the children's routines as normally as possible. I drove them to school each morning, prepared dinners with my mother in the evenings, and kept up with their homework and after-school activities. We started moving small boxes to the new house during weekends so the children would become acquainted with the neighborhood. I continued updating my journal daily, recording each call with my attorney, meetings with the therapist, and any new developments. My attorney encouraged me to keep adding every detail so there would be a clear, organized record to share with the court if needed. My brother and mother helped every step of the way, and my colleagues checked in regularly, reminding me to stay focused on what mattered most, building a stable, safe life for my children. As the final hearing approached, the conclusive custody hearing commenced on a rainy Monday morning. My brother drove me and my attorney to the courthouse. We carried boxes filled with documents, school reports, therapy notes, and statements from neighbors, teachers, and the children's therapist. The courtroom was filled with family, legal representatives, and observers. The judge entered, and both attorneys presented opening arguments. My attorney began by outlining the sequence of events and the key evidence demonstrating how my wife's actions had harmed the children. The wife's lawyer commenced their side by asserting she only acted out of fear of losing her family. They claimed she felt desperate and made errors because she desired the children to be close. But when they called her to testify, her own conduct began to undermine that defense. She altered her answers, avoided direct questions, and struggled to explain why she informed the children they had a different father. When it was my turn on the witness stand, I responded to every question regarding the timeline. From the first moment I noticed the children avoiding me to the day I received the DNA test results, I described the events without emotional embellishment, focusing on the specifics of what transpired each day. My attorney inquired about the children's reactions and shifts in their routines, and I explained how the falsehoods had made them fearful and withdrawn. The judge then questioned my wife directly. She was asked to clarify her motivation for disseminating the narrative that I was not the father. She provided vague answers, attributing it to stress and claiming she did not precisely recall what she told the children. Her inability to offer a consistent explanation caused the judge to frown and take meticulous notes. My mother testified next, explaining how she witnessed multiple arguments where my wife made false accusations and created disorder in front of the children. She informed the court about the day my wife threatened to contact the police if I did not leave the house and the commotion at my brother's home when my wife appeared uninvited. The guardian ad litem presented their report recommending I receive permanent full custody. The report emphasized the children's enhanced stability and well-being since residing with me and noted that interactions with their mother caused them visible distress during the evaluation. The court summoned the mental health evaluator who completed the psychological assessment of my wife. The evaluator testified that my wife exhibited untreated anxiety, manipulative patterns, and required ongoing therapy before unsupervised visits could be safely considered. The evaluator's statement aligned with the guardian's recommendation for full custody. My attorney presented phone records demonstrating frequent communication between my wife and her high school ex-boyfriend throughout the marriage. Even during the period, she claimed she was solely focused on our family. These records added weight to my wife's lack of candor about the children's paternity and her own relationships. During cross-examination, my wife's cousin was called to the stand. Under oath, they admitted my wife instructed them to spread stories about me fabricating DNA results and harming the children. The cousin's admission directly contradicted earlier claims from my wife's side that rumors originated independently. The judge paused several times to ask my wife questions, highlighting her failure to acknowledge how her behavior impacted the children. He pointed out inconsistencies in her statements and noted concern that she did not seem to grasp the gravity of the emotional harm caused. As the morning extended into the afternoon, my wife experienced an emotional outburst during testimony. She stood up, shouted accusations at me and the judge, and refused to sit down. The judge ordered the bailiff to clear the courtroom for a brief recess to de-escalate the situation. After 15 minutes, everyone returned, and proceedings continued. The children's therapist testified, displaying drawings the children made and explaining how parental alienation had affected them. The therapist praised the progress the children made once they felt secure living with me and emphasized the importance of maintaining stability. In closing arguments, my attorney contended that granting anything less than full custody would jeopardize the children with further manipulation and confusion. He highlighted the consistency of the evidence from the guardian, the therapist, the teachers, and the psychologist. The wife's lawyer concluded by asking the judge to consider granting her a second chance, claiming she only desired a relationship with her children. After both sides rested their cases, the judge thanked everyone and announced that he would issue a final ruling the following morning. He explained he required time to review all the documents, witness statements, and reports before rendering a decision. Court adjourned for the day. My attorney walked with me out of the courthouse, reviewing next steps for the morning. My brother picked me up, and we drove home in silence. The children were already asleep at my mother's house, and we agreed to maintain everything calmly and normally until the judge's decision arrived. I continued to document every event in my journal that night, ensuring every detail was recorded as the final decision approached. On the morning of the ruling, I arrived at the courthouse with my attorney, my brother, and my mother. We stood together outside the courtroom until the doors opened. Once inside, we sat near the front, facing the judge's bench. The judge entered and began by summarizing the evidence presented during the hearing: the DNA results, the children's therapist reports, the guardian ad litem's recommendation, and the testimony about my wife's actions and unstable behavior. The judge explained he reviewed everything carefully overnight before reaching a decision. The judge ruled to award me full legal and physical custody of both children. He stated clearly that my consistent involvement in their care since their birth demonstrated a stable environment, while my wife's repeated falsehoods and attempts to alienate the children caused emotional harm. He cited her failure to acknowledge the damage she caused as a major reason for denying her unsupervised visitation. The judge set supervised visits for my wife. These could only occur if she completed therapy, provided regular updates from a licensed counselor, and demonstrated progress. The judge made it clear the visits would remain supervised until she showed lasting stability. The judge ordered my wife to pay partial child support each month. He also issued a restriction prohibiting either parent from relocating the children out of state without written consent from the other or permission from the court, ensuring the children would not be taken far from their home or school. After the ruling, my attorney and I met with the children's school administrators. The principal and guidance counselor updated the children's records, listing me as the sole guardian and emergency contact. They removed my wife's name from the pickup list and official records, so there would be no confusion or risk of unauthorized contact at the school. That afternoon, I met with the children's therapist. Together, we formulated a long-term counseling plan that included individual and family sessions. The therapist explained how consistent therapy would help the children recover from the fear and confusion they experienced. We scheduled appointments for the next several months to build trust and support their emotional healing. 2 days later, my brother helped me finish moving the last boxes into our new home. The children each selected their own bedrooms, and my mother decorated the living room with some of their favorite drawings. The house was filled with familiar furniture, toys, and photographs, imbuing it with a sense of safety and stability. We established new routines for school mornings, homework time, and bedtime stories. My attorney guided me through transferring all important records into my name alone. He helped update the children's medical files, insurance policies, school documents, and legal papers to list me as the only parent responsible for decisions about their care. Outside the courthouse, as we were departing, my wife approached with her lawyer. She attempted to come close, but I maintained my distance and reminded her that the protective order was still active. My attorney stepped between us, and we continued walking to the car without further engagement. Over the next week, neighbors and friends who once believed my wife's stories began reaching out. They apologized for doubting me or spreading rumors. I accepted their apologies courteously, but made it clear I needed to maintain strong boundaries to protect the children and provide them with a peaceful home life. A few neighbors offered to assist with school pickups or meals, which I thanked them for, but declined, wishing to keep the children's environment as simple and calm as possible. My employer summoned me to the office, offering extended time off to settle into the new house and support the children. I accepted 2 weeks away from work so I could focus on therapy appointments, school meetings, and daily life without haste. My attorney filed the initial paperwork for divorce proceedings that same week. He explained the custody ruling would simplify the process since it clearly established my role as the children's primary parent and documented my wife's instability. A few days after the ruling, members of my wife's family reached out. They expressed regret for siding with her during the custody dispute. They inquired if they could see the children or visit soon. I explained calmly that any contact would need to be gradual and based on the therapist's recommendations. I made it clear the children's well-being had to come first, and everyone involved needed to respect boundaries. At home, the children started calling me Dad, again without hesitation. They began recounting stories about their day at school, showing me artwork, and asking me to join games or assist with homework. Each night, I read them bedtime stories and sat with them until they drifted off to sleep. As I tucked the children into bed one evening, I surveyed the room filled with their favorite books and toys. I reflected on everything that had transpired, the accusations, the apprehension, the courtroom battles, and how narrowly I avoided losing them. I considered each person who stood by me, from my family to my colleagues, and how every piece of evidence and every witness helped safeguard the children. I vowed to continue providing them with the stable, secure life they merited, free from confusion and fear. Together, we commenced building new routines and memories, determined to leave the turmoil behind and advance with tranquility and affection.